أعزائي المشاهدين، أهلا وسهلا بكم في هذا اللقاء والحوار الخاص مع الكاتب والمفكر والباحث موسى نعيم. أصدر مؤخرا كتابا أثار جدلا كبيرا واهتماما واسعا. هذا الكتاب هو The End of Power أو نهاية القوة، ونود في هذا اللقاء أن نناقش معه هذه الفكرة الجديدة المطروحة بالإضافة إلى قضايا تتعلق بها. أهلا وسهلا بكم مجددا. أهلا. Welcome, Dr. Naim.
Thanks for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. Well, first of all, many people in the Arab world probably they don't know you very well yet. And we would like to take this opportunity to allow you to present yourself to them in a brief way.
Well, perhaps the first surprise is that I am from Libya. I was born in Tripoli, but I left with my family when I was very young. I was 4 years old. And we went to Venezuela. And that is where I spent my formative years. I am a Venezuelan citizen still. I have dual passports. I have an American passport and American citizen, but I'm also a Venezuelan citizen and very much interested in my country. And there is where I spent, that's where I grew up. So my formative experience is there. Then I studied in the United States, went back to Venezuela where I was an academic. Then I entered the government. I was the Minister of Industry and Trade of Venezuela. I was the director of the central bank. And then I came to Washington many years ago. As I came to the World Bank, but then I stayed, and as you said, I worked at the Carnegie Endowment, which is a think tank in Washington.
Well, let's examine then the end of power. This thesis or synthesis or that you refer to, the end of power, well, there are many elements that make up power. At one point, one of those realms would be political, military, economic, moral, etc. In at least one of these realms, power is ending. So which one of these realms is most decisive in leading to your conclusion that power is ending? Was there any particular event, in any particular country, or any particular world issue that led you to conclude that there is an end of power?
That's a great question, and the answer is that, as I said, one of the things that nurtured my thinking was working at Foreign Policy magazine, and we covered the military and international politics and international affairs general and security and development, and it is, and I saw it everywhere. Once I got the idea, I started looking at the world through the lenses of that idea, and I found that it was everywhere. And the book is very ambitious. The book says that the trends that it describes are happening everywhere, geographically, and everywhere functionally, in the military, in religions, in churches, in big business, in small business, in the media, in culture, in science, in sports, in everywhere that humans are organized to do something, and where power exists, the trends that I describe in the book are shaping the outcome.
Well, you have extensive experience in global economic also, and Foreign Policy magazine, also a very respectable magazine. So you have also lots of international interaction and experience. Can you give us an idea, although this book was started before the financial crisis, but since you also have some connection with the World Bank, director, I think, at one point, was the financial crisis of 2008 in any way did change, shape your opinion about the end of power also?
It confirmed it. I think that essentially, let me state what the main thesis of the book is. The main thesis of the book says that power nowadays is easier to acquire, harder to use, and easier to lose. That those that have power have now more challenges and more rivals and more forces that limit their ability to wield power. I'm not saying that there are not centers with a lot of power. The Pentagon, the Vatican, big banks, the president of China, Russia, the United States. These are very powerful individuals that run very powerful institutions. What I'm saying is that, however, they are powerful, but nonetheless, the power that they have is more limited, that they can do less with the power that they have than before. And one of the examples is the global financial crisis. You saw a situation in which it seemed that no one had enough power to really act. We are already still seeing it. They started in 2008, and we are now in 2013. And in Europe, the situation is not getting better. And one of the explanations is that no one seems to have the power to get things done. There is a lot of good ideas about how to get Europe to grow again and to move, but no one has the power to do it. And those that have power are very constrained. And that is a confirmation in that aspect of the main thesis of the book.
I'm tempted to ask you a question probably for economists, but many people are wondering what happened to the money that lost during the financial crisis. Most people do not know where the money went or why no one on Wall Street was criminally prosecuted or sent to jail. Does this relate in any shape to the end of power in some fashion?
Well, the story with the money, there is no doubt that there was some very dishonest behavior, and that some individuals, bankers and mostly, ended up earning a lot of money and making a lot of. But you know, if you have a house and you buy the house for 10, and then you have to sell your house, and you sell the house for 5, then you have lost 5. So I ask you, where did that money go? Where are the 5 that are no longer there? Well, they're evaporated because the asset, the value of your asset declined. And it's not that no one stole your 5. It's that the house that you bought for 10 now is worth 5. Nobody stole it. The value of the house went down. A lot of that happened.
But why it went down? Who is responsible for that price first?
In many cases, it was bankers and speculators and others. In many cases, it was the people that bought houses for 10 that were not really worth 10. And but because money was plentiful, because bankers gave you a loan, because everybody was doing it, people went and bought houses for 10. But the house that the people bought for 10 did not have a value of 10. And then when the situation changed, the real value of the house appeared.
But because the dominant economy now is a service economy, because it's a financial transaction economy, it's not really products that people can share, can use. That's why, is that transcending way of economy from making profit through manufacturing things or producing things to produce now service.
There is no doubt that the service economy and the service sector is growing in advanced countries, in the United States and Europe and so on. And there's no doubt that now we have intangible assets, a software program, movies, and so on, that are important, have important financial values. But it's still also true that goods and manufacture is important. If not, go ask the Chinese if they think that manufacturing is not important. Mm-hmm. You know, manufacturing is at the core of the Chinese double-digit growth for 30 years. Manufacturing is very important at the end of the day. So what matters now is that there are other activities surrounding manufacturing that is have to do with services and others.
I think at the heart of my question about these issues is that what is the role of economic system or economic progress or economic vision to the end of power? Because is that essential more than any other? Is the gaining or acquiring technological power or military power or political power or economic power is more important? Which one?
Yeah. Well, start with the definition of power. What is power? Power, the standard classic definition is power is the ability of one actor to get others to do or stop doing something. So that's the definition of power. And so
let me repeat that. To do or stop doing something.
yeah, it's the ability of you telling me do that or don't do what you're doing. And that gives you the power to decide what I do or don't do. And you can be a person or a country or an institution or a church or an army. And in each one of those, the power has different connotations. So you ask, is the economy, is money at the end of the day the most important factor? Well, it is very important, but not the central one in some aspects, in many aspects. The people that took to the streets in the Arab Spring, many of them were, of course, unemployed and sick of the corruption of the surrounding the country, sick of and very disappointed about the economic situation, and that was a very important factor. But many of them also took to the streets for reasons that have nothing to do with money. And they became very powerful. They became so powerful that they were able to dislodge dictators that everybody assumed that they were going to be there forever.
Well, I want to take a quote from your book. You kind of describe the conversation that's happening about power like an elevator conversation. Who's up, who's down. And the bulk of the conversation, the elevator conversation you call it, comes from the United States, where analysts tirelessly argue whether the decline of the country is terminal, treatable, transient, or indeed an illusion. Is it declining? Is that decline is terminal? Is it treatable? Or is it just transient? Or it is an illusion? What do you think?
There is a debate about which country is becoming the new superpower, the new most important country in the world, and which country is going down. And the debate is very much happening in the United States. Is the United States going to lose its number one position to China? And one way that people explain it is that China's GDP, the size of the Chinese economy in the next 5 years, in the next 10 years, depending on who you ask, the Chinese economy is going to be larger than the American economy, the economy of the United States. And people then say that's the definitive confirmation that China is going to be more important than the United States. I disagree with that. And in the end of power, what I argue is that it doesn't matter who's up and who's down, because everyone is going to have less power. China may have a larger economy than the United States in absolute terms, but in per capita, per Chinese, the China is 10 times smaller than the United States. Per capita GDP in the United States, the income per capita of the Americans is 10 times the income per capita of the Chinese. And what I claim in the book is that what matters is not who's up and who's down. What matters is what other sources of powers you have and what is happening to the constraints that limit the ability to make others do what you want or not doing what they stop doing, the definition of power that I mentioned before.
But one think about this issue in these terms. When you start looking at the balance of power, is what time? Let's say within the 7 years we're talking about. At that time, the balance of power was different. There is powerful people, dominant countries. People think the United States to be superpower, the only superpower. It's been challenged now. There is no question about that. China, Russia, the BRICS countries. But the reduction of power in the mind of people, or the end of power, is the end of the powerful, because the others, they were less powerful and they are coming to gain a little bit power. This is the kind of confusion going to create when you say the end of power, in the mind of the people, there is a particular people who were dominant. It's power they're ending. You're going beyond that, but how can you explain the changes that occur in the world, and how you explain the world system now?
That's the difference between absolute power and relative power. In world affairs, it doesn't matter what power you have. What matters is what power you have relative to your rivals. So it doesn't matter if your power is large or small. Is it large or small compared to whom? Compared to your rivals. And what's happening is that your rivals, the challengers, are also seeing a decline in their ability to get things done. You mentioned several countries that are rivals to the United States. The United States has a lot of problems, as you know. It has a difficulty of getting an agreement domestically about the budget and about the fiscal situation and about healthcare. You know the debates. But look at what's happening to other countries. You mentioned China. China is slowing its growth. China has all kinds of domestic turmoil as a result of a slowing economy. China has all sorts of contradictions that need to be solved, and has all kinds of challenges that need to be addressed. Look about the BRICS: Brazil, Russia, China, India, South Africa. All of these countries are now facing slowing growth and domestic turmoil. People are taking to the streets in Brazil. In Russia, there are all kinds of problems, and Putin continues to be a very powerful person, but his power is more constrained than it was 10 years ago, 5 years ago when he took power. He has all kinds of difficulties doing what he wants. The same is happening in India. India's currency has just experienced a very important devaluation. India's growth is in problem. So, yes, the United States has problems, but others and its rivals also have problems, and that's my point. Weakness everywhere, in which everyone that has power now has less power.
Well, let me challenge this one more time. Somebody saying it's the bending of power, of the powerful. What you are talking about is really, essentially, you are trying to blend everybody together while the world is in different classes or categories of power. There is people already, whether by natural resources or by other means, they are more powerful. It's true that the world is experiencing that you cannot exercise the power that you like. But in the eyes and the mind of the people, there is institution in the world that they are serving certain powerful countries. So there is, in your discussion, there is no dissemination or dissecting of those institutions to show that the people who are controlling those, or they were at least behind creating those institutions, there is a new institution. Or are you calling for a total chaotic situation in the world? If everybody is not able to exercise power, then what kind of world are we going to have?
So those are very good questions. The first one is, as I said it before, and let me repeat it again. I am not saying that the world doesn't have a lot of powerful institutions and countries and individuals. I say that at the beginning, I repeat it. What I'm saying is that those who have power, and we're always powerful and are powerful today, have more problems managing that power and doing things with that power. Power today buys less than it used to buy before. The President of the United States continues to be very powerful, but is less powerful than before, than its predecessors and historically. And the same happens everywhere. And the book, by the way, is not just about countries and about governments. The Vatican is a very powerful institution, continues to be a very powerful institution. And the Pope just visited Brazil, where he was received and acclaimed and created great enthusiasm. But the Vatican is losing, the Catholic Church is losing 500,000 Brazilians a year are leaving the Catholic Church and joining other religions. Pentecostalists and evangelical Christians and others and Islam. And it's happening, and it's happening around the world. And other religions are appearing and challenging the Vatican. Big companies are being challenged by newcomers. Kodak, that used to be the dominant manufacturer and company of photography and film and cameras in the United States, it became very famous at advertising. There was a Kodak moment, meaning that every family had a picture made with a Kodak camera, with a Kodak film. Kodak is now bankrupt. At the same time that Kodak was filing for bankruptcy proceeding, a new company called Instagram, that was 2 years old, had 13 employees, and it's just an app in a telephone, was sold for $1 billion. I'm not saying that Kodak was bankrupt because of Instagram, but I'm showing you how giants are going down and newcomers are appearing and changing the rules of the game. The ways in which Instagram manages its business and provides services that have to do with photography have nothing to do with the way in which Kodak used to manage the situation. And the same is happening with universities. The same is happening in science. The same is happening in culture and in war. You have seen all kinds of examples of how having the mightiest army, the Pentagon, is the biggest institution, the biggest armed forces in the history of humanity. And the Pentagon is now facing challenges from the Taliban to Al-Qaeda to the pirates, the Somali pirates, that are challenging the Pentagon. They're not going to win, but they're denying victory to this mightiest army that has ever been assembled.
Well, you mentioned at the beginning in your answer something related to the technology and development of technology. We're going to talk about why those three revolutions that you mentioned, we're going to talk about them. But let me go one more with this. Because we're addressing a world that looking at a world order that's shaped by the 5 permanent members of UN, by the 700 plus military bases of United States, by this kind of mighty military, by this economy, etc. But also they recognize the declining of power of United States. They are looking, okay, you describing that everybody now has the same problem, but they still standing on different level. What kind of shape the world order going to be, or it is now, or in the next couple years or more, 10 years, is going to be shaped?
I see a world that used to be remembered during the Cold War. We talked about a bipolar world, a world with two poles, with two superpowers, the Soviet Union and its allies, and the United States and its allies. It was a bipolar world. Then after the fall of the Soviet Union, we started talking about the multipolar world. A world in which you have Russia, but you also have China, and you have the BRICS, and you have others. And what I see coming is a world that I call hyperpolar.
Not non-polar, hyper.
Hyperpolar, in which you have a lot of players. You have a profusion of players. I'm not saying that each player is going to be a superpower, but I'm saying that a lot of these players will have the ability to constrain the capacity of the superpowers to do whatever they want, which is
the big country by economy or biggest, it's not really the only reason. You could have a small organization, or you could have a small country that can be very effective on the world stage, or regionally, more than anybody else. And the big country, or the superpower country, or what we think it's superpower, is no longer been able just to compete with superpower. And I
call those the micropowers. The book talks about the mega players, the traditional powers that have wielded power and control always, the big players, and I talk about micropowers. So mega players challenged by micropowers. The example I gave, Instagram is a micro player that took on the market where there was a dominant mega player called Kodak. The United States is the mega player, but now has all sorts of micro powers that limit its ability to do things, that restrain and constrain the ranges of options that it has.
The world system is shaped by many countries now competing for prominent power or place. But we witness now the kind of people consider it now new rivalry between Russia and the United States, because Obama canceled the upcoming summit meeting, although he's going to meet on the G20, but he's not meeting with. What do you think, since we are in the United States and all eyes now on the United States and President Obama, and you were the editor of Foreign Policy, people expect from you to kind of give analysis of how you think American foreign policy is being conducted and how it's being received throughout the world. Do you think it is really the limit of power of the United States, or there's also kind of a United States that refuse to bend? It has all what you're talking about, the declining of its power, the reality, but it used to be the people who control, let's say, the political decision-making process. They are not admitting that they should adjust to this new world, and that's why we can see what's happening now.
What I have learned by living in Washington all these years, by being the editor of Foreign Policy, by being part of the conversation and having a lot of friends in government and elsewhere, is that governments come to power in the United States. They get to the White House with a long list of priorities, and then they are surprised by the world. President Obama came with a list of things he wanted to do, and the first thing he discovered was that the economic crisis was much, much bigger than anyone had anticipated. He knew that there was a problem, but the problem kept growing and growing and growing and becoming quite significant.
Dr. Na'im, I would like you to finish, because this is a very important thing, but if we could please hold your thoughts until we have one more break and we'll come back. أعزائي المشاهدين، سنتابع هذا الحوار بعد فاصل قصير.